Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt and I have spent the last week with Toyota's Crown Signia. This kind of fits between the RAV4 and the Highlander, but with a much more Lexus spin. And this styling might look familiar because it's making its way through the rest of Toyota's lineup. Same thing with the interior. So the Crown is the jewel of Toyota's umbrella, and we're going to take a look at the 15 things that you need to know about the Crown Signia. Let's get into it. We're going to start with what this thing is and what it competes against. Now the Crown Signia kind of does the Crown thing to the Venza, which means it brings a more upscale or Lexus light feeling to a Toyota product. Now this slots above the RAV4, which the Venza kind of was, and below the Highlander in Toyota's lineup, which means it kind of competes against things like the new Nissan Murano, kind of a Subaru Outback, and maybe a Mazda CX70. And under the hood, it's hybrid only. This is Toyota's 4th gen hybrid system, so not the 5th gen that we've seen in the new Camry, but it's the same 2.5 4-cylinder that we're familiar with under the hood of things like a RAV4 hybrid. But this gets 21 more horsepower than a RAV4 hybrid at 240 horsepower. The EPA says you'll get about 38 mpg with this thing, but we did our Lakeshore loop test with mixed driving and came back at 42.1 mpg, which is pretty great. Now you might be asking yourself, where's the Hybrid Max 2.4 turbocharged engine, which you're not going to get under the hood of the Crown Signia. Now personally, I'm fine with that because that would be much thirstier, and this isn't necessarily intended to be a sporting thing or not even really necessarily intended to tow, but it's still more powerful than the Venza it replaces, and it's more powerful than the RAV4, and it still does 0 to 60 in under 8 seconds. But then power goes from that engine through an eCVT transmission to an E all-wheel drive system, so there's no physical linkage between the front axle, the motor, the transmission, and the back axle. It's all just an electric motor out there fed with the power from the hybrid battery. That hybrid battery is 1.1 kilowatt hours, which is enough to be pretty efficient, as we talked about before. The battery lives underneath the rear seats, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, and the 12 volt for your accessories and your starter motor is in the trunk for weight distribution, probably. This thing is 4,200 pounds and it drives pretty well, very supple, and again, we'll talk about that more behind the wheel. But then in terms of styling, you've got the familiar hammerhead face from the Crown and the Prius. You get LED runners, which actually aren't C-shaped despite how it looks. They terminate right there, so there's nothing going on up there. But overall, it's a nice, aggressive front look. You've got almost a gradiented grille, which again is a little bit Lexus light, and I suspect that we'll see this sort of face make its way onto the new RAV4 when we get it a little bit later. Now there's 5 different colors that you can get your Crown Signia in. My personal favorite is white that I saw at the Chicago Auto Show last year, but this gray does look pretty cool. You've got wheel options up to 21 inches is what we have here, and these look like the optional wheels that you can get on a Toyota Camry. They're 235 width tires, so they are wider than the tires on my BMW M340, but it still ends up being pretty efficient. We take a step back, look at the profile shape, and this is kind of what throws people. It is more wagon-esque than general or conventional SUV. It's not so upright, it's not so boxy, but it does look elegant, and it looks kind of fast just sitting still here. But it does ride a little bit lower, especially in the roofline, than a traditional SUV. But you do get a little black detailing for your wing mirror and on your D-pillar back here. But as we zoom out and take a look at the rear 3/4, it actually looks pretty clean. And look at this full width kind of slim tail bar. It reminds me a little Maserati Grecale, if I'm honest. We've got Crown spelled out in bold lettering. We've got the Hybrid Beyond Zero Pearl badge over there, and then Limited over here, and it doesn't say Signia anywhere on this car, at least not that I've seen. But overall, I'm a fan of the wagon-esque styling, so leave it down in the comments if you think this or the Mazda CX70 looks better. But as we come down to the bumper, this thing will tow 2,700 pounds. Kind of expect maybe 3,500 pounds, but that's generally Highlander class, so I guess this splits a nice difference between a RAV4 and a Highlander. And then there's the powered trunk, which operates off a kick, although it's probably all salty, so it's not actually recognizing my foot there. But you do have a power-operated tailgate. You do have close and lock, which we always love to see. And here, you have a pretty big trunk. Now, the numbers can be deceiving because according to the measurements, this is only about 25 cubic feet of space, which makes it 10 cubic feet less than a RAV4 hybrid. But the thing that I think is happening is that's all vertical space. So if you're not stacking things up to the roof, you're actually probably going to have a more usable, dailyable space with this footprint here. Incredibly wide, incredibly deep, and when you fold the seats down, which you can do from the back here, and then you can even extend the backs of the rear seats to make the floor flush all the way up to the back of the front seats. Again, with all the seats down, you're looking at about 67 cubic feet of space, which is still less than you'd get in a RAV4, but I do suspect it is a longer, more practical and realistic space. It's about 6.5 feet long from the back of those front seats all the way to the back of the trunk here. But it's not exactly perfect. You don't have any grocery bag hangers back here. You kind of have some underfloor storage, but no spare tire, and you don't have an outlet to charge things in the back here. Then of course we will move up the cabin to the rear seats. Taking a look at the door first, it actually doesn't open 90 degrees, so it might be slightly less convenient to load babies or children into the back here with a child seat. But you do have some really nice stuff. You do have heated outboard seats here. No shade. Maybe I might like to see that at this price, but you do have leather wrapped door cards here, some gold accenting, your JBL, and the battery for the hybrid system lives under the seats here. Now, when we get in, I am 6'1". For reference, I'm 6'1", and I've got plenty of knee room in front of me. The issue starts to become with headroom. I am rubbing my head and my hood on the ceiling here. And this is kind of the downside of the wagon effect. The longer, lower, more sleek roofline, more aerodynamic shape does translate to less headroom back here. Another thing, you don't have a third zone of climate control. I might start to expect that with something that's kind of in between the Toyota and Lexus moniker, but you do have vents back here. You've got USB-Cs, dual map pockets, or just storage pockets. Apparently no one puts maps in there anymore. You do have cup holders, as you might expect, and overall, the materials are pretty good. I love the saddle brown interior with the perforation and some of the gold detailing. So overall, versus the RAV4, more legroom, less headroom. And as we check out the front seats, you are gonna have two-person memory seats up here. Again, fully leather wrapped door card with some gold detailing. And the seats themselves, again, very, very pretty. That saddle brown that we have here, very nice contrast with the gold accenting and piping through the headrest and the rest of the seats. These are lumbar control and powered, of course, 3-level heated, 3-level cooled, and you have a heated steering wheel with 2 levels of heat. And this Crown Signia does the Lexus climate concierge thing where you can put it in auto and then the car will read the ambient temperatures outside and inside the cabin and automatically adjust your heated and cooled seat, which is super nice, and it has been in these frigid temperatures this week. Then we'll touch on the cabin design as a whole. Again, I want to take a moment to appreciate this saddle brown interior with the gold piping, as we've talked about, but take a look at the way that the leather wraps around the top of the dashboard. This kind of encompassing effect is what we saw on the last Lexus RX that we were in not too long ago, their plug-in hybrid. And then of course you've got leather wrapping around the dash itself and into the center console. You've got gold accenting through the vents all the way across the dash, a knurled speaker dial, and into the steering wheel itself. It does look much more expensive, much more high-end than the interior of my RAV4, so that's where your money's going, is on the interior here. You do have the Lexus LC500 or Prius style shifter up here. You've got some nice handy cup holders that are in the right spot, not tucked up underneath the dash, and you have a little storage area right here, as well as a vertical wireless charger, which actually works pretty well. And you've got physical buttons for things like your climate and your heated seats and all that sort of stuff. So overall, this cabin combines great materials, solid build, good technology, and good detailing. So I think it's a total win. And then as we touch on the tech more specifically, you can get pretty much everything. And when I say pretty much, it's because you can't get a head-up display, which I think is just a little bit odd, but you do have this really large and comprehensive fully digital cluster. There's a bunch of different customizability that you can integrate here so you can see everything that you want to see. And then you move over here to your main event. This is your big 12.3-inch center infotainment screen. It's Toyota's Connect system that we've talked about hundreds of times, it feels like. So it's wireless over-the-air updates, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, dual Bluetooth connection. You've got, great 360 cameras, and you can even change the color of your car. Now the thing is, when you start to reverse, the car goes away. Hold on. How did I do that? There we go. As you start to reverse, the car goes away because it'll actually show you what's underneath the car. It'll remember what you did. And then as you go into drive, it does take the camera away, which is a little bit of a bummer, but still, the cameras work pretty well themselves. Once again, we have a wireless charger and we have a digital rear view mirror. And the best thing, or one of the best things about this, is you get Toyota's Safety Sense 3.0, which includes a little eyeball watcher here. It is a little bit annoying, this eyeball watcher. It does yell at me and tell me to sit up, especially if I'm driving with my hand up here at 12 o'clock, then I kind of block the view of it, so then it gets a little upset with that. But overall, when you are using it, it works pretty well. Obviously, with stuff like this weather, with snow, ice, and salt on the roads, it does struggle a little bit, but overall, the technology from driver assist to Apple CarPlay and everything works really, really well. Like, for one, it's a little weird that there's no head-up display. I mean, this is supposed to be the Lexus light vehicle, and you can get a head-up display in a RAV4, but not here in the Crown Signia. And you still have Toyota's Egg mode, which is still the most useless feature in any car, but I guess it doesn't hurt anyone that it's here. But the other kind of useless feature is this EV mode button. It does work at very light throttle and under like 20-24 miles an hour, but the car will also put itself into EV mode, as you see it just did there, depending on what it thinks will be the most efficient. If the battery's got enough charge, if you're not demanding too much throttle or torque, then it'll do it for itself. So this isn't super useful. And another Lexus light thing I might expect to see is a third zone of climate for the rear seats. You've got vents, which is cool, but you don't have an individual climate zone. And this car replaces the Venza, which had a super cool electrochromic frosting of the panoramic roof. This has a nice panoramic roof, but it doesn't have that electrochromic feature, which was kind of cool. And you go to settings, lights, where you would typically see your ambient light controls, but there's really nothing here, which is just kind of lame. And there's a prop rod for the hood, which I would expect struts for something like this. And the last thing we'll talk about before we go for a bit of a drive is the price. Now, this thing, the Crown Signia, slots in between the RAV4 and the Highlander, and yet it starts at more than the Highlander. The XLE here starts at $43,500, and the Limited starts at $48,000. And as tested with some of the paint and some of the options that we have here, we're at over $51,000. So it can get pretty pricey, but I also really like this thing. So let's talk about its value behind the wheel. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video. Crown Signia. Obviously that's not what it's for. It's not for launches, but you do have 240 horsepower, which is more than a RAV4. It's about exactly the same as a Nissan Murano and less than a Mazda CX70. But the Mazda CX70 is like crazy expensive and pretty big. So again, we kind of look at this segment, there's kind of like fringe competitors. There's things like the Nissan Murano, which is new, just had a go in, and it's pretty nice, different, but pretty nice. This is a more wagon-esque interpretation of the class. The Murano's more kind of classic CUV, SUV shape. And then there's the CX70, which is just a CX90 with the back or the third row taken out, so it's also significantly more expensive. And then there's the Subaru Outback, which is wagonish, but also a lot more off-roady. So this does fill a spot that's not currently filled. I don't know how many people, I think the market has shown us that we don't really want wagons, but personally, I love wagons. So I really like this thing. I think it looks cool. Some of the standouts for me this week were the fact that it looks cool. It looks really good. I like the styling. It's clean, it's modern, it's elegant. It looks pretty expensive, kind of that bridged gap between Toyota and Lexus that we've been talking about the whole time. And then you come into the cabin and it's the same thing. Real, genuine leathers, gold stitching, contrasting and gold piping in the steering wheel, across the dash. The dash molds around you. Genuine leathers, heated and cooled seats, heated steering wheel, climate concierge. I mean, this is like Lexus level stuff. It doesn't quite feel Lexus in here, but it's close enough to the point where I'm like, I own a RAV4 hybrid, and again, we'll do kind of a head-to-head video between this and the RAV4 hybrid, but this cabin is in another universe compared to the RAV4 cabin that I have. It's just nicer. It's more modern, it's sleek, and it's well designed without losing the physical tactility of physical buttons. And I love that. My wife loves that. Every human I've ever talked to about modern cabins in cars loves to have the physical buttons. The cup holders are in the right spot. They're not pushed up in front of the shifter, so if you have a tall water bottle, or just even a normal water bottle, it's not resting up against the dash. It's just well and cleverly done. But then the driving experience, smooth. The RAV4 Plus, you know, it's the same basic engine, but it does feel a little bit more sussed out. It's a little bit more smooth. It's a little bit more refined. There's more cabin isolation going on, so there's less powertrain noise. And we know this Toyota powertrain can sound a little bit coarse or kind of loud, needlessly loud, but this kind of quiets some of that back in a really kind of nice way. I've got different I've got loads of I mean, there's really nothing going on here that I don't like. It looks cool, great back seat space, great trunk space, technically less than some rivals, but I think in real world application, you're getting a very, very good product here. Toyota reliability. Is it too much money? Maybe, not sure, but it's Japanese built. I know that's important to some of you. I don't know, it's a compelling thing. I really like it. I really like it. I liked it earlier last year when I drove it at Road America when it first came out, and I like it here now that I've spent a week with it. So thank you to Toyota for letting me have a go in your Crown Signia. Thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.